One man, 30 days, 678 games, no online purchases. Man, I mean, that in itself is a quest, and that is what the film Nintendo Quest is about going after those games without using any of those sweet little cheats on the side. And we are happy to be talking with the man behind that quest, Jay Bartlett. Thanks for coming on the show and talking with us.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. It's a real pleasure. Enjoy your show a lot.
Thank you for that. And I'm enjoying that background. I mean, it looks sweet. And before we started, you were telling us it's game room 1 of 2. And then I'm just like, are you kidding me? How many people are just dying to have one game room and looks awesome? You have 2?
Yeah, I'm working on 2. This was the original one. And what can I say? There's just too many games. And that's by no means bragging. It's just I might have a little bit of a problem. So it's had to extend into another room in the house. But hey, my girlfriend still lives here, so I'm doing something right.
That's got to be a good problem to have, though. I mean, I know it can get expensive, and that's one of the things I wanted to talk about as far as collecting as well. But let's start with just in terms of gaming itself. I mean, I think to get to the point where you want to do like a film documentary like Nintendo Quest and just get into collecting itself, you know, it must have been something that sparked your interest when you were very young. Can you tell us about your first gaming experience?
My first gaming experience, yeah, man, for sure. It was The Empire Strikes Back on the Atari 2600. It was the first game I ever owned. My first actual gaming experience was, I don't know which version of Pong it was. I think it was Atari's Pong, but that was at my aunt's way when I was like in the late 70s. And I was just fascinated by it, and I just loved it. And I just remember sitting down playing against my cousins, and time just was gone. You know, it was like 3 hours later, we're getting called for dinner. I'm like, whoa, what the hell? Like, what just happened, you know? So I got sucked in right from the very beginning.
Was there like a specific overall console? Like, did you get into the whole console one is better than the other, or that didn't really matter? You play whatever you thought was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly had favorite games, but I was never one to say this is better than that. I was fortunate enough to have my mom really be supportive. I mean, she got me into this. She got me into Star Wars, so let's just blame her. It's her fault. And she was fortunate enough to see when the Genesis came out, when the NES was out, and I'm like, Mom, you know, I got to get this new one. The graphics are better. And while her not really understanding what that meant, she still supported me. And so I pretty much had most systems, most of the mainstream systems. And then when I was old enough to work, I started working at 13 years old. And then it was just, I bought them all. Yeah. Every paycheck went to games, pretty much.
Well, that's got to be pretty cool, though. I mean, to have a parent that supported or at least wasn't against gaming, because I know a lot of people who have even gone on to do something in gaming talks about how they had to fight constantly because their parents just didn't get it.
Well, my dad didn't. That's a whole other story. My mom didn't get it, but she certainly wanted to make me happy, right? And that's what made me happy. And I told you, I blame her to this day. I'm like, you bought the 2600. It's your fault. So
At what point did you get into collecting? Because I mean, obviously, especially back in the day, you would buy these cartridges and maybe you would lend them to your friends, and then eventually either you got to the point where you said either I want to see if I can trade these in, if that was an option, or it kind of just sat somewhere. When did it get to the point where you said, hey, you know what, I want to collect these and actually put them on display?
Yeah, that was I'm going to reference your interview with Rob, and he almost said the same thing that's going to come out of my mouth, where I remember when the new stuff was coming out. So the NES was out, just talk the mainstream stuff, and then Genesis and Super Nintendo were out. And I remember, nobody wanted Nintendo stuff. The guys that I hung out with, they all wanted the new stuff. And I didn't really understand that. I mean, I wanted to play the new stuff too, but I'm like, hey, I don't want to get rid of Super Mario 3 because I'm pretty sure I'm going to want to play that again in a few years, right? So I remember a few times I did get rid of a couple of games and one of my systems, and I felt so horrible and guilty, and I really felt like I sold off like part of my, like if I had children or something, it was a family member I was getting rid of. So right off the bat, yeah, I didn't like trading stuff in. I didn't like selling stuff off. I just amassed a collection. So everything you see back here, for the most part, like the NES, the Super NES, all that stuff, it's all my original stuff. So yeah, I've just hung on to it, much like Rob did when we were growing up. So
something I was always curious about as far as collecting, because like I collect baseball cards, and there was a point where there was a number of, and comic books too. There was a point where I liked certain baseball players and I liked certain comic books, but then it was like, oh, this is a number one written by Todd McFarlane. I'm not really into this character, so I don't think I'm going to get it. But then you're like, I'm a collector, I should. As a gamer, was there like, I guess, a divide between saying, I like this Nintendo game, I want to buy it, and it becomes part of my collection, or I don't really like this Nintendo game, but I have to get it because it needs to be part of my collection?
are we talking like early on?
Yeah, or like early on.
No, early on, I just went for the games that I could play over and over again. I remember there used to be a little rental store. Oddly enough, it was called Nintendo Headquarters. It wasn't, but that's what it was called. It was just actually down the street from where I live now. And I rented every single weekend. I rented Contra for NES, and I rented it so many times I could have bought it 2 or 3 times over. So no, I pretty much just stuck to the ones that I really love to play over and over again that had good replay value. I didn't really have the need back then to have the entire set. So that's something that's just kind of amassed over maybe the last 10 years. So
Later on, it was a point where even if you didn't really enjoy the game itself, you wanted to get it for the collection aspect.
yeah, I mean, I've talked about this in countless interviews. Video game collecting is a game. If you really think about it, going out there and hunting, going to the garage sales, the thrift stores, blah, 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 that's a game in itself. The thrill of the hunt. You never know what kind of gem you're going to find. You never know if you're going to find a little Samson under a box or something like that. You just never know. So for me, while I still am an avid gamer, I really enjoy the collecting aspect just as much as the actual game. I love getting out there and finding this stuff. So that's really when we were starting to structure the film. We took out eBay, we took out the internet, because we wanted to do a throwback and say, hey, look at the experience you're going to get if you go out there and find it yourself. You're going to get, you're going to get in the car with your buddies, and you're going to have memories tied to each of those games. It just means more. Do you know what I mean? So anyway.
What would you say was a game that you purchased and maybe it was kind of expensive, and then you looked at the game itself and you're like, man, this game isn't that good, and I can't believe I paid a lot? I mean, did that ever happen? Because I always figured like there must be some like really obscure NES game, because there were so many NES games that came out at one point made by everybody, and it must be one that was rare, but it was totally just, it sucked, and you're like, man, I gotta buy it, but damn.
Honestly, there's nothing that comes to my mind. However, I will say two that stick out are two favorites of mine. And one was Super Mario 3, which I believe in Canada it was April 1990 that got released. And my mom actually got that for me for Easter. And I remember, I don't know if it was wrapped or not, but I remember looking at the box and she left the tag on, and it was $99.99 from Toys R Us. So it was a $100 cart.
Holy cow.
Like, wow, like crazy. And one step further would be a year or two later when I got Phantasy Star 2 for Genesis, and I bought that myself when I started working, and that was $129 at Toys R Us. So those were some expensive but good ones. There's nothing really that sticks out in my mind that was, above average that I would have paid for. I would have done my research. So
were you ever surprised about some games that came out? Because like when I was talking to Rob, I was talking to him about how there were so many accessories, but there was also a lot of games at some point that were just like, hey, Nintendo's super famous, let's make a game, and it's terrible. Was there something like that that even you discovered, you're like, this is a game?
yeah, Taboo for NES. Have you ever played that?
No.
It's tarot cards. You're just drawing tarot cards. There's no game to it. That's all it is. I don't know if back then that was supposed to be your tarot card reading or whatever, but yeah, that's one game that, you know, we recently came in contact with and we were playing it, and I was just like, what the hell is this, man? Like, seriously, like, who developed this? There were some guys who sat down and were like, this is a really good idea. Let's make virtual tarot cards. I was like, okay.
Maybe it was back during the Miss Cleo days when she was a thing, and they decided.
There's that, and there's some weird, like, have you ever heard of Ghost Lion for NES?
No, I haven't heard that either.
Ghost Lion is a really bizarre RPG with box art style of like the old Conan or Red Sonja stuff of the 80s. Very, like, I don't know, that one's just really weird, and it was an ongoing joke when we were shooting that myself, Rob, and the producer Jordan, we actually picked one of these really obscure games, and when they found it, it was like, you know, their turn to pick the bar for the night or something like that. We just had a lot of fun with it, and Ghost Line was actually Jordan's. Check it out after this, man. It's weird.
As far as, you know, the beginning of putting something together, because I think that, you know, what happens, especially in gaming sometimes, is you want to do something, you want to put something together, whether it's a film, a website, a book, and you have these great ideas, but a lot of people have a problem getting to that next step. Now, obviously, the film's finished, even though it's not released yet, but we know it will be. What was the process like in the very beginning? You know, like, were there challenges to get over that hurdle even before you put the Kickstarter in?
Yeah, I mean, a good script, and you know what I mean when I say that. The movie is by no means scripted, but I mean putting together a good idea that would just unfold, you know, on the film screen when you're watching it. And there wasn't a whole lot besides the main idea, and that we wanted to talk to industry personalities. A lot of the list I came up with because there was just guys that I'm like, wow, this is a chance for us to hang out and talk to Todd Rogers or Bill Mitchell, and, you know, those are guys I've idolized for years, right? So we had that part, and then we had the collecting part. It initially started where Rob wanted to shoot a documentary on collecting, and it was going to be me with my Star Wars or with games. And it was just really, it's been done a million times, right? So then we're like, okay, well, how about you bring the crew and you, like, film me finding games. And that was all good, but I mean, that's done a billion times every day. There's pickup videos, which there's nothing wrong with those, but we just wanted to do something a little bit different. So then Rob came up with kind of like the rules, and it just went on from there. The biggest challenge was, I don't know, man. It was a lot of hard work that we put into it right off the bat, and I think that was the most challenging thing, is that every single day, and I know you just started following me on Facebook and all that, but you've had Rob on for a while, I assume. Every single day, all he does is work, and he's promoting and pushing and pushing, and I've really learned through him that only through that will you succeed. I've seen people do a post, they make a wonderful video, and then they post it once, and that's it. And it just, you know, fades away. You have to constantly be in people's faces and say, hey, look at this, check this out, we've worked hard on this. That's been the most difficult part. Is it's fun, but it's just constantly promoting, constantly working. Does that make sense?
Oh, yes, definitely, because you definitely see, even with games, where there may be a lot of great indie developers or something like that, and either because of budget or time or a combination of both, they're not able to get enough, you know, views, enough hits, enough people, you know, talking about them, that it really gets out there. And actually, speaking of time, I mean, that must have been difficult, not only just the 30 days, but having to deal with working, family life, girlfriend, stuff like that. I mean, can you tell us a little bit about that challenge of time?
Of course, actually, you just triggered, I think, my biggest fear I had was, we came up with the idea in May, and honestly, I'm by no means a rich guy. I have a regular job, that kind of deal. And so I had three, let's say 4.5 months to save because every game in this film is purchased by me with my money. It's just as simple as that. And all the while in the back of my mind, when the Kickstarter is going, I'm getting excited, I'm getting pumped, I'm nervous, I'm scared. All these emotions are going through me. And Rob would always say, if the Kickstarter, if we don't make our goal, this isn't going to happen. So I was always like, oh my God, like I was excited, but trying to calm myself at the same time because I really do feel that he's made a really special movie. And I hope everyone does enjoy it because we worked really, really hard on it. To get back to what you're saying, balancing work, yeah, it was tough because I did have 30 days. So he's like, okay, go. The clock's ticking down. But I still had to work. I think we mapped it out to 18 or 19 days of me game hunting total. Because the rest, there was some days I couldn't. There was some days I had to be at work at 9 o'clock. So, I mean, I live in London, Ontario. Toronto is here, and there's a few other cities, but we couldn't really go too far because I had to come back the next day to work. So it really ended up only being 18, 19 days. A girlfriend, I didn't have one at the time, so that was okay. But it was a lot of fun, man.
Can you tell us, we love interviewing people, and I especially love doing interviews and loves talking to different people. The great thing about a lot of documentaries is all the different people that you get to meet, talk, and you're saying, and same with Rob was saying, how that was just a big enjoyable part of it, just being able to talk to these people. Can you tell us a little bit about that interaction, being able to talk to the different people that you have in the film?
Yeah, meeting again gaming celebrities, I call them, because they're guys that I've looked up to my entire life. I'm 39, so I very much know of Todd Rogers growing up through the 80s and him being the very first professional video game player of all time, having over 2,000 records, world records. Being in King of Kong, which I'm a huge fan of. I love that film. Like Rob and I have seen it so many times. And I'm like, oh my God, we're going to get to talk to Todd Rogers. Like, you kidding me? And the analogy I always make is it's like if you're like a hockey fan and you get to hang out with Wayne Gretzky for a day. That's what it was like. And even a step further now, we're actually really close friends. So it just blows my mind every day. We got to meet Mason Kramer, who is the Super Mario Brothers 3 world record holder, Super Mario World record holder, John Pompa. Oh, geez. Greg Pavich, who's famous for the Action 52, Cheetah Man. I'm sure you know all that stuff. We actually got to go to his house and we got to hold the prototype cart of Action 52 and just cool stuff like that, man. Rob got to interview and meet Thor Ackerland, the winner of the Nintendo World Championships 1990. And that in itself was rewarding just to me because it was like, wow, it's like I felt like I won the lottery. I get to hang out and talk to all my all these celebrities that I've looked up to. So
What was it like the actual hunt itself? Because I'm sure that even if people haven't been out collecting, someone must have seen maybe like some of the pawn shop or the pickers or going to the storage lockers, so they have an idea of maybe what collecting might be like. But what was it like going to different places to find these games and sometimes meeting people? I remember I had an old Texas Instruments TI 99 4A that my uncle gave me, and I remember having to hunt and finding someone like 2 hours from my house and driving out there and talking to them because it was like such unique to go searching for it. Do you have something like that in your hunt for the games?
yeah, I mean, we're going out and finding relics that are 30 plus years old. Um, I guess the biggest way I can describe it is I say it I think in the first trailer where it was every day feels like Christmas Eve, so it's like 30 Christmas Eves in a row, and that's really how it felt, man. There's that feeling, and then the other feeling I had was constant. I guess fear would be the word, because not knowing what's going to be in each place, if I see, let's just use an example. If I find Super Mario Brothers 3, the store has it for $15. Okay, do I pass up on it and move on and hope to get it for $5, or am I going to not see it for cheaper? I mean, keep in mind I did have a pretty limited budget, so it wasn't like I was going into every store and, oh yeah, I'll take that, I'll take that, I'll take that. There was plenty of haggling. There's plenty of bargains that I was getting from people. So it was the best feeling with the worst feeling, but I would do it again in a heartbeat, man, because it was. Sorry.
No, I was going to say, did you have like an interesting character as far as when you were actually trying to purchase from like a person?
Yeah, it's really quite amazing how you have a blank slate of a story and you go out and start shooting and what develops. I mean, Rob and I couldn't have wrote this stuff, the things that happened. It was crazy. We were at a wonderful store called Warp Zone, and the owner, Darren, was in contact with us and wanted to know if we would shoot at his store. It was on our route down to the States. We're like, sure, man, we'll come there. So we actually had a lot of NES games, like a lot that he purchased for the film. Like, so I would go in and look, and he had some really rare gems that he brought in. He also had a regular that what was that?
Oh, there's a truck that was passing by.
That's awesome. So anyway, he had a regular, and I'm not going to name names. He's in the film. That got wind of our little tour going through, and he's also a collector. So he's like, "Oh wow, Darren's getting in all these rare games." So we didn't show up till I think around 11 or noon, and the store opened at 10, and this guy was here right at 10. So Darren had already had the NES games out in his display case ready to go, right? Ready for us to look at. But he went in and he scooped up one of the big ones right out from under us, even though he knew we were going to shoot. And it was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. I'm not going to wreck anything, but what happens between him and I and the interactions we have and the outcome of it's pretty cool.
Road trips in itself usually are awesome when you have a group of friends, but it must be even more like when you're filming and you're hunting for games. Do you have like little tidbits that you could tell us maybe behind the scenes what it was like just on that trip?
I slept a lot in the production van. I remember the second road trip going down to Texas, it felt like a couple of hours, which it's not. It's like 2 days, but I remember sleeping a lot. Yeah, we made this game called Voices, and I'm not going to give you an example because it's embarrassing, but basically there would be 4 of us sitting in the van. One guy would come up with a movie line. So let's just use I am your father as the movie line. Okay, so that's the line, and then the next guy would pick the voice to do it in. So the movie line would be I am your father, do it in the voice of Jerry Seinfeld. So whoever was in the hot seat had to deliver this line as Jerry Seinfeld. We took it a step further, and we layered characters on top of each other, 3 of them. So it would be Seinfeld, he would do the line, and then the next guy would add a voice on that. So it'd be like, the line is, I'm your father with Jerry Seinfeld and Miss Piggy from the Muppets. So now he has to come up with a Jerry Seinfeld and Miss Piggy combination. And then we did one more voice on top of that. But you should try with your friends, man. It's entertaining, and it kept us, well, we were a little loopy from driving, but it kept us going for like 3-4 hours. It was a lot of fun.
Now, I'm going to ask you one that you got stuck with that they made you do.
Well, they always would do a lot of Star Trek stuff because the joke is, Star Wars and Star Trek fans don't get along. I don't have anything against Star Trek. I don't particularly like it. So Rob would always be like, okay, the line is this now, Spock. Now Kirk. I'm like, come on, man. Like, give me something cool. So yeah, that's always the joke. If you listen to our podcast, Rob's always throwing in some Star Trek references to annoy me because I usually begin it with some kind of Star Wars news. So
overall, how did you feel about the reception that it's gotten? I mean, obviously it did well with the Kickstarter. There's been a lot of interviews, good press. How overall have you felt about the fans' reaction and anticipation?
It's completely humbling. I wake up every day and I can't believe the reception we've got. The amount of people that just want to talk to us and interview us, hang out with us, and just talk collecting. It's something else, man. And the film's not even out yet, which is the really surprising part. But we've met some wonderful people that I'm now proud to call my friends. All the list of people that I named in our film are now all dear friends of mine. So it's just been a wonderful experience, and we can't say enough that this community is amazing. We have to all keep positive and get each other's backs. We're all in this together. So Rob and I aren't gatekeepers, as he would say. We involve everybody in what we do. It's not just, this is our movie and you guys are the outsiders. We want everyone involved. So we come to all the events we can. We sign anything you want. We'll talk to you. Yeah, man, we just love hanging out. So
That's really cool, actually, because sometimes you do hear about people who, once they get a little bit, I guess, what you'd say above or making that next step, that the ego can kick in. So it's really cool to find people that are doing something, but they're still really cool.
You hear about that all the time, man. You do, and I'm a musician too, so there's a lot of rock stars I look up to, and you can compare the two, where we wouldn't be where we are without fans or without people to show it to. So people who get a big ego, I don't understand that, and treat people like crap. It's like, without these people, you don't have anything. Do you know what I mean? Like, you're creating content for people to watch, and then you're crapping on them. It just, we never understood that mentality of that. And we are very positive, happy guys, and I think that'll be seen in the film, and everyone will see that. We don't have anything negative to say. Life's too short for that crap. So
Definitely. Now, one question that we also asked Rob, we're gonna put it to you. Do you have like a top? Let's say in this case, since we're talking NES, do you have a top NES game, or maybe even a top 3 that you would list?
My favorite NES game is Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. Why? Because it was a game that scared the hell out of me as a kid, because the brutal difficulty. And after we shot the film, there was a lot of fears that I was facing. And again, you'll see it in the film. But that was one of them, as funny as that sounds. I was always afraid of that game. I was afraid of how difficult it was. So I picked it up, and I didn't stop. And I actually finished it, I think, 3 times in 1 week. And now it's one of my favorite games. NES games. Well, I mean, I'm not going to say Mario, because I think that's just a given for everybody. I really enjoy Gun Knack, because I love the guys who do that in the Blazing Laser games for the TurboGrafx. So Gun Knack is a great top-down shooter if you've never tried it. It's fantastic. Right now, it changes from time to time, but right now I'm really into Mega Man 2. I really enjoy the second one a lot. I think it has the best bosses overall, the best power-ups. So those are my 3. What are yours, man? I want to know what yours are.
I love Mario RPG. I know that's a SNES game.
Yeah, you're cheating, man. You said it.
All right, I guess in NES, Super Mario 3, and I think that just sat with me because when I first got it, I didn't know I was getting it. I really wanted it. And then I remember I went to relatives on Christmas, and my cousin, who was like 10 years older than me, is like, hey, I have a gift for you, but you need to dance first. And it's like, I hated doing any type of public stuff in front of people. And they're like, hey, if you want it, you get it. If not, I'll take it home. And I'm like, well, what is it? He's like, I'm not going to tell you. And I had a feeling it was a game, but I wasn't sure. And I remember getting up and dancing in front of everybody, and everyone's laughing and everything, and it's embarrassing as hell. And then he hands me Super Mario 3, and I'm like, okay, totally worth it. So, that is definitely my top game.
And now look, man, you're interviewing people, so there you go.
Worked out.
Maybe that broke you out of your shell there, right?
I mean, that's the thing. Being able to talk with different people, just like you guys did in the documentary, is really important, just to get not only the aspect of their culture and their background, but also like what they're into. And in
Yeah.
Obsolete Gamer, we realized that so many people, regardless of what they're doing now, whether it's making films, making brand new games, or whatever, had some type of gaming background. So hearing about these old classic games that they grew up with and they still love today is really interesting. Um, as far as your collection, like what you have behind you, do you have like that piece that you would show and be like, oh my God, this is, this is it. This is like the creme of at least the collection that we see there.
Um, there's nothing that I can show at this time. No, unfortunately.
Ah,
Well,
it looks
actually,
awesome though.
it's there's a lot of like new stuff. Like a lot of 360 and like PS3 stuff. I did actually just score a couple weeks ago. We did a panel, or sorry, an appearance at the Waterloo Game Swap, which is in Canada here, and I had a couple of extra amiibos. I'm sure you know about all that craze and all that stuff, right? So I had a couple extras, and I traded them for this vendor straight up for a sealed copy of Xenoblade on the Wii. I was like, whoa.
Nice.
Xenoblade. So yeah, I just had that put into a frame and stuff like that. It's in the hallway over there, but yeah. So let's do it. Ask me that question again in like 3 or 4 months, and we'll come back to it.
Oh, definitely. Now, as far as the film, when we get a chance to take a look at it.
So right now our first screening starts at the end of June in LA, and then we're going to Vegas. I'm bad with the dates. Rob has all these locked down, but he did say them in his interview. We're going across North America again on what we're calling the Power Tour, which is Pyre Productions, Rob's team, actually shooting us going to the different cities and the different events, and we're going to release an hour and 30-minute documentary for free online. So when the film is readily available for everyone, you'll be able to get this Power Tour kind of documentary as like a side piece that you can watch for free. And it'll be just a lot of fun. A lot of us, just going out, doing some game hunting, screening, doing some Q&As and panels, and the hijinks that no doubt will take place on the road again. We're actually, we're coming back to our hometown of London, Ontario here at the end of September for 3 screenings, and we are very excited because that's our hometown, right? So to be able to show it at the Highland Theater, and that is the theater that I saw Return of the Jedi when I was a kid. So to be able to screen it on that is really, really exciting for me too. So
The film is Nintendo Quest, and I know y'all going to be seeing it, so we're going to keep up to date with a lot of information so you can keep track of it as well. And Jay, thanks for coming on, and hopefully you can come back on and we can talk some more about your collection and your games.
Absolutely, man. Pleasure's all mine. Thank you.
All right, and this was the Obsolete Gamer Show. I am Jay LaRock. We are sponsored by Obsolete Gamer, where gamers come to talk. We will be back soon for another episode, but until then, remember our motto: never stop gaming. We'll see you later.